Welcome back, listeners. Allie, in the first segment there, we just covered some GDUs and some early harvest things here, quick on corn and kind of dry down stage of the crop. Then we touched on tar spot quite a bit. And I think just to kind of wrap up that tar spot topic here a little bit, as I've made the rounds and ran into this disease, some of our producers maybe just hadn't really heard a lot about this disease. I know we talked about it quite a bit in winter meetings, Allie. We've been talking about it, but sometimes maybe until you see it or experience it, it's not something that you really understand, how severe this could be. And a lot of growers that maybe didn't know a lot about tar spot, you pointed out, hey, this is something we really got to watch. And maybe as you talk about some of the risks and how yield limiting this disease can be and the impact it can have, it's kind of eye opening. So as we kind of think about now between next spring, one thing I'm telling growers is number one, just to be looking for it. If you see hybrids or fields that have it, pretty high severity, logging down the hybrid information, I think is good, just so we can kind of get a dialogue that some hybrids show it more than others because we know genetic or hybrid selection is a big part of it. Any other considerations you can think of, Allie, as we get through this harvest to kind of be looking for and as we prepare for next year for this disease?
We talk about looking for it. So as you're in the field, you're not going to be able to wipe off these lesions. So that's a very distinct characteristic. And then even after you've harvested these fields, if you go back and you're looking at some of the residue in those fields, you'll still be able to positively identify tar spot in some of those cases. And I just really wanted to hone on, I guess for me, it's tar spot is a disease that can very rapidly spread once it's here. And so hybrid selection is going to be your primary tool. So like you said, we've been out, we've got our head wrapping our head around where this disease has spread into Minnesota this year. So reach out to us as you find it in your fields, your seed, our Pioneer sales reps to make sure that, we can position the right products to not take care of, but hedge yourself more positively as tar spot continues to progress across the area.
Yep. And I think as each season progresses with this disease, the month of August is always going to be the critical time for us. And this year, the weather in August wasn't favorable, but that scouting your fields, just poking your nose out there, looking for this disease is going to be important because like we've said so many times, the progression of this disease in 5 to 7 to 12 days, if you think you see it out there and come back 2 weeks later, in some cases, it could be too late. That's how big of a deal it is. But so yeah, good segment there, Allie. Soybean harvest, early soybean harvest underway. In most cases, we're seeing the early maturity beans that were planted early, ready to go. However, with the weather, we're progressing right into mid-group ones already. And I expect by maybe the first of next week, even the group twos, I think everything will be ready. Any early take on the soybean observations, Allie? Yields coming in maybe as expected, underperforming, overperforming? What's kind of the general vibe out there?
I think actually yields kind of west of 52 that I cover, I am pleasantly surprised. So yields are maybe a tick better than I had originally thought they might be across the area. So that's really nice to see. Very positive in terms of the early beans. And like you said, we have moved into even some of those mid-group ones. This wind, especially this week, I think is continuing to progress things along. But I know you and we had several conversations as we came down the stretch this growing season of, what was maybe going to hold a little more yield. Some of these early planted, early maturity beans, where some of our later maturity beans going to hold on a little bit better. But, we'll see as we get into some of those later ones. But so far, I would say I'm pleasantly surprised. How about your take as you get east of 52?
Yeah, I would say similar. There's been some very, very good yields. There's still some variability out there, whether it be from some agronomic challenges or I think some moisture variability still kicking in. It will be interesting as we continue to climb up the maturity ladder of beans. Some of these early beans have put up some really good numbers where as we get to, late group one or early group two, going to have to yield very well to keep pace with these early ones. And that'll just be interesting. Can we see a maturity yield increase? Is it going to be kind of a flat line? Could there be a dip in the yield there? That's probably still to be seen. But I would say overall maybe exceeding expectations a little bit just based on the dry weather we had down the stretch. And the other thing as we do get into soybean harvest is it is crazy how closely these beans are maturing, even from a 0.9 to a 2.1. It's only going to probably be maybe 10-day gap between they're both ready. But I always say too, with soybean yields, we got good weather. We just got to stay after them. Ideally, once those beans get harvest moisture, let's just say 12, 13%, we'd like to get them the first time to get there, so we don't go through a rain cycle. In most cases, every time we go through a rain cycle and a bean swells and contracts back, we just tend to use lose yield in those fields. So, staying on top of it, but I think in some cases it's going to be a challenge for how quickly things are maturing. I think by next week, we're just going to have to just keep moving through it as fast as we can. And, but overall, yeah, early results are good. And, now it's just hopefully that trend continues throughout the region.
And I think one more thing just on the early bean side of things as we maybe come into the end of the show today. A lot of questions as I talked to folks early about some of these early maturity beans coming off. What are some of the reasons that would make a person look at implementing, early beans planted early across their operation?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is just looking at the calendar and when we started harvesting them. I don't know what the first day we started beans was, Allie, but it might have been around the 16th, 17th of September, give or take a day or two there. The big reason for me is as we've had some challenging falls is what can we do to spread out, the workload? How can we add more harvest days to the fall? And that's one of the biggest driving factors of just getting those beans out before the weather turns and then just really shifting focus to corn. And the other side, we're seeing good yields from them. I mean, if we can start this early with these kind of yields, also some agronomic implications where if we can, maybe manage some mite wool with early beans planted early, there's a lot of advantages there, but a lot of good things. And hopefully the weather stays good, Allie. And next week we can talk about a whole bunch more harvest information, hopefully talk about some really corn yields as well. And be sure to tune in then.
You've been listening to Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060. If you've missed part of the show or want to hear more, check out the show page at kfilradio.com or with the 103.1 KFIL app. Stay connected with Allie and Josh on Twitter. It's at Allie GYs, WISE, and at Josh Schaffner to submit your questions for the show. Tune in next Wednesday for the next Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060. We'll see you at 11 a.m.